Hey everybody, I'm Shane,
I'm Kyle.
and this is Retro Reco. And this week, if you might not know, we each pick movies. This week it's Kyle's pick. Kyle, what's your pick?
In this episode, we're going over the 2005 movie Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, written by Shane Black, directed by Shane Black, starring Robert Downey Jr., Val Kilmer, and Michelle Monaghan.
Ooh, I watched Bang Bang Kiss Kiss, and that was heavy by the fact that it was just sex.
Oh, yeah, also, for all of those people that are coming from Miyazaki and me, in some ways we're sorry. To actually quote this movie, for the good people in the Midwest, sorry we said fuck so much.
Yeah, this one we're hitting that Reddit R rating for some of these episodes. If we're watching a family movie, we'll keep it fairly PG. But for those movies that aren't PG, there might be some language because there's going to be language in the movies.
Yeah, there's going to be language in the movies. In this case, we are going to say multiple F words that happen in the movie, but maybe not all of the F words that come in the movie because,
Yeah, there's one I'm not saying.
yeah, there's one I'm not saying. I was like, in 2005, we thought that was still okay to say that word. It's not.
So I have an
Um,
opinion on the use of that word too, and when we get there, I'll get
yeah,
there.
when we get there, we'll get there. So yeah, so a little bit about the movie before we kind of get into it. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, like I said, written and directed by Shane Black. It is based in part on a novel called Bodies Are Where You Find Them by Brent Holiday. It was screened at the Cannes Film Festival out of competition, and this movie flopped like big time. It only cost $15 million to make, and once it was finally released internationally, is where it made most of its money, and it ended up making globally about $15.8 million.
And then the fun little segment that we'll be doing on this show, because at least one of us would have seen these movies before. Kyle, when did you first see this movie?
So I first saw this. I think, ironically enough, I think this means you actually saw this movie before I did, even though this
I
is
would bet I did because I saw it opening night.
yeah, 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 opening night. Yeah, so I did not see this until it got onto DVD, and the DVD was released in June of 2006. I was still working in a video store when this came out, and I was like, "Oh, Robert Downey Jr. I like Robert Downey Jr." and rented it. Like read the back, which was a very vague description of the actual movie. Which I mean, honestly, it's kind of hard to describe this movie without going into the full length of the film itself.
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Oh, it's a detective movie. That's kind of cool." I ironically at the time I was actually reading a bunch of like Raymond Chandler books and stuff like that, and I was like, "Oh, I love detective movies," and yeah, this is my favorite movie. So
Yeah, so I saw this opening night in the theater because I was working at the movie theater at the time. Actually, no, I might have seen this the night before opening. I think I watched this on preview night with
okay,
I brought because I was with one friend, and I believe the only other people in the theater were people that worked there. So I think I saw this the night before opening. Because back when I worked at the theater, I don't know if they still do it because everything's digital now. But back when I worked at the theater, they had to preview all the movies to make sure that the reel was working
okay,
and that everything looked good, that there was no problems with it because they did splicing up in the they would get X number of canisters and they'd have to splice them together to put the movie together. So they had to double check all that. And so when they were doing these previews of the reels, if you worked at the theater, you were allowed to come and you were allowed to bring one guest. So there was a lot of movies that I saw before opening night because of that. This being one of them, I believe, because yeah, I don't think I think it was the night before, and I remember just me and my buddy that was there absolutely loved it. Like we were having a blast um, while watching this movie, and yeah, I wouldn't say that it's in my top all time, but it is a super super fun movie that I highly enjoy.
Yeah, well, and we'll talk about this later. Like this, I not to speak for you, but in discussions we've had before, I don't even think, if I remember right, this is your favorite Shane Black movie.
It's not. No, it isn't. And it used to be my favorite Shane Black movie.
Yeah,
And then The Nice Guys came out, and I really liked The Nice Guys. And The Nice Guys just feels like an updated version of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, though, in a lot of different ways. And there's a few things that I think one of the reasons why I like The Nice Guys more is that I would say there's a few things in that movie that are less problematic the further away you get from the time it was filmed.
yes,
Because there's some things on this one that I'm like I cringe while watching
yeah,
it still. But luckily they're not quite bad enough to be like oh I can't watch this anymore. But they're still pretty bad. You gotta kind of put some blinders on at certain spots. But I mean that's the way it goes for a lot of older movies, unfortunately. Like you've got to tell yourself like I can't just say that I'm not going to watch this piece of art because there's a there's a problematic thing said in it. You've got to say like okay, I have to understand that the time and the as you said earlier, like at the time, like people were still okay with something like this, and we know it wouldn't fly now, and we know that the director and writer Shane Black wouldn't do it now
yep,
because times have changed and the and people's mindset on those things have changed.
yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah, and actually, let's full on get into kind of the elephant in the room. Like this movie it ironically has a very prominent, well written gay character,
yes,
but is also in a lot of ways very dated in its stance on sexuality and homophobic issues and homophobic slurs.
yes, and that gay character, if it was played by an actual gay actor, I
Yeah.
think I would be less cringe with some of the things that he says. But Val Kilmer is not gay,
No.
um,
No, he's not.
and and so some of the things that he is saying, and yes, I understand that the character is gay, but the slurs that he is using, and honestly, if you watch the movie, he is the only one using those slurs
Yeah.
as the gay character, which is good, better, I suppose, but still, um,
Yeah, it's
you
it
just get in your mind that you're like, oh, a straight man wrote this and a straight man's playing it,
it's like it almost feels like using those words as a way to what the intention probably was in the writing was using those words as a way to kind of deflect and take them back. But yeah, it's
yeah,
still it's a bit problematic in the grand scheme of things. Um, like that was a good idea uh, potentially in 2005 when this was written and produced, but now it wouldn't fly anymore.
I will say there is an introduction of a character that is almost literally doing the thing that we have a problem with, like, uh, uh, gosh, the I don't remember her name, Harmony. Uh,
Yes.
when they introduce Harmony as a character, they're at a party and she's the second character, the third character introduced, I think, and
Yeah.
she's telling a story where she's comparing Rudolph the
Rudolph.
Red-Nosed Reindeer to being black,
Yeah.
and it's such a social justice white girl actress thing. Like
Yep.
to me, like it made me laugh every single time I see it because I'm like, oh man, it is like I get you're trying to make a good point, but I've seen people like have these like say these things and have these opinions where it's like I'm just making an analogy that this is what this is a sign of when it's like okay, first off, that's not what that's an analogy of, and
Yeah.
second off, ooh, you sound rough saying that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and it's funny because those people exist and they did a really good job of making this character that. Like, there are times that I hate Harmony because I'm just like, oh, you're that person, and then there are times where I'm like, okay, yeah, but she's. I mostly hate Harmony, honestly, but there, yeah,
Yeah. One last thing before we get into the movie itself more kind of in general. So have you heard the various things that this movie was called before Shane Black finally settled on Kiss Kiss Bang Bang?
This will be fun. I think I've heard one or two of them because I think we've talked about one or two of them in the past. It's like a passing joke, but
Yeah. So the two that were actually like either working titles or had script versions. It was originally called "You'll Never Die in This Town Again."
which I think is one of the names of one of the Gossamer books.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
movie.
It's
Yeah.
I want to say it's one of the names of the Gossamer books. And then the working title when Robert Downey Jr. got cast was LAPI.
I remember that one. I remember talking to you or that being discussed before. That's the one I remember. That's a bad name.
Yeah, I was just like that title's awful. And yeah, Shane Black finally settled on Kiss Kiss Bang Bang because he said it brought, he says that this is a romantic comedy film noir. And it's like, okay, so you get the romantic comedy aspect with the kiss kiss and then the mystery elements with the bang bang. Okay, I can see where you're coming from.
I can dig on that. I can dig on the way they got to the title. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is not a bad title, I don't think, but like it's still not a great one, honestly.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
in the grand
it's
scheme of
not
things,
great.
It's a mouthful.
Yep. And actually, Robert Downey Jr. on the Joe Rogan Experience, this was a few years ago. It was when he was promoting Doolittle.
Okay.
Yeah.
That movie did great.
Yeah, that movie did great. He was asked like what his favorite movie was, that he's been in, and he said, "Kiss Kiss Bang Bang." Which is, in some ways, the best film I've ever done. It wound up being a calling card. It came out, it bombed, but Jon Favreau saw it. And he said, this guy could do an action movie. And that's how he wound up in getting cast as Iron Man.
Yeah, this was really his comeback. Like, he had done a couple movies around this time. Like, he did Charlie Bartlett around the same time. But, like, this was his big, like, it's getting released in theaters. We're gonna put him on the front of the, on the box and in the poster and put him forefront. After his problems with alcoholism and drugs and stuff that put him in jail.
Yep.
In the early 2000s, or was that late 90s? I think that was late 90s.
Late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah. And then this was really his comeback. Iron Man was his full comeback. This is what brought him back. Like, this is what, obviously, as he said, Jon Favreau saw it. So like this was his actual return, and Iron Man was his re-breakout, I would say.
Yep. So yeah, let's get into the movie. I actually, so like I said, I was working at a video store when this came out, and because of the tone of the movie, I would flat out tell customers that it's like, hey, there's basically a cold open to this movie. If you don't laugh and find it funny, just shut the movie off and return it, because you're going to hate this movie if you don't like the intro, because you're going to realize what you're in store for. And the opening scene is this nice shot of this like county fair with a young magician about to cut a young girl in half with a chainsaw, mind you, which that's always my favorite part of, like, it's not like, a big knife or a saw. It's a full-on chainsaw that he's using.
Pageantry. You gotta have pageantry, and that kid had it.
It's true. So as his assistant is cutting through, the chainsaw stops and gets caught. The girl in the box starts screaming just bloody murder. Some guy from the crowd jumps up, because even the magician is, kind of startled, like, oh, I don't know what to do. The guy comes out, busts open the lock, whips open the top of the the box, realizing that the girl is tucked nicely sideways, perfectly fine, looks up at him and says, "I'm going to be an actress." And then the guy definitely is about to smack her, and
Definitely
then
hits her. Yep.
definitely hits her, and then opening credits.
Yeah, and then which is I mean it's a solid cold open. It gets you an idea of the tone right away. Although not really. Honestly, it gets you the idea of what the humor is going to be, I suppose, as you had said there.
Yeah,
But
it's
it definitely doesn't for sure give you the tone fully. But I think that the idea of the joke and then something serious happening right after the joke is actually a pretty solid idea of the tone. And then they jump into Robert Downey Jr. narrating.
yep, Robert
And
Downey. Well, most importantly for me, title card day one, Trouble is My Business, which we will get into these title cards a little later. I love this little Easter egg. But yeah, Robert Downey Jr. is our narrator.
and he's unreliable.
Very unreliable.
Because he keeps having to stop and rewind and do things, which honestly, if he was a narrator, if he was narrating this thing and everything was running smoothly, I think that it wouldn't have worked as well.
Yeah,
The fact that he kept making mistakes as the narrator, and so it actually did seem like somebody recalling parts of the story, like I think that works in the sense, because it's really easy to have a narrator piece to your movie and it just not work.
yeah. So he is at this party, in L.A. This fancy party. I love the production design on a lot of the elements in this movie. It's just so good and so well shot, even though it's for so bare bones. Like every bit of money they spent on it winds up on the screen. Like nothing's wasted. Yeah, the supporting actors in most prominently, Larry Miller as the other agent, and Corbin Burnson as Harlan Dexter, is a lot of fun. But I love the narration that we get. Like you said, it's very unreliable. But the writing in total for this movie is just so good. Because you get like the little stuff. So we cut to a title card that says how Harry got to the party, and Harry is a small time crook, who is, as he says later in the movie, he's boosting Xboxes in the East Village, so in New York. And I love this little thing. He's at a toy store with a nephew or something. So he's on the phone with a nephew, and the nephew's questioning like, how's the store still open? It's like, it's holiday hours.
Yep.
And then his partner is watching this little train set go along, and then right as the little train passes, an actual train passes, and it shakes enough to disarm their little gadget they have on the alarm, and they have to run out of there. Even though he's a criminal, he's still super thrifty, and he's stealing from like the bargain section.
Well, he's accidentally stealing from the bargain section, because really he's looking for a gift and he's like, it's straight up the I don't know, kids kind of gimmick of like all Nintendos are the same. It's like, no, I'm asking for a PlayStation. Yeah, I got you a Nintendo. Like, except this one is whatever what the kid actually wants, and he's like, oh, like Protocop. She's like, no, Protocop hasn't been on in years.
Yeah, it's like that show was canceled like 2 years ago. He's looking for a cyber agent.
Cyber agent, that's right.
Which, ironically enough, is now the name of the parent company for Pro Wrestling Noah and DDT. Is a company called Cyber Agent.
Maybe they're a fan of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
But yeah, one of the lines that so Harry goes through, and his partner ends up getting shot, and he runs away, and runs into an audition for a criminal. And I love the life in imitating art moment of like the audition that he is at is a scene of right after a partner got shot in the movie. And so he just kind of has this mini freak out, and the casting agent is like, "Oh, that was brilliant. We gotta cast this guy." And then actually, as he's like leaning down at the casting agent, kind of begging in character, like crying, that's when the cop comes in, and the cop's just like, "Oh, sorry."
Yep. And I mean, it's a nice little moment because you can. It was well acted to show like I don't know how to act to like I'm actually reacting to something.
Yeah.
Takes a good actor like Robert Downey Jr. is to portray that on the
Yep.
on the screen. But yeah,
Yeah. Then Harry's just talking about, "Oh, now I'm in LA and I, meet when we're a girl at a party, spells her name Jill, spells her name Jylle, that kind of bullshit." And then he even admits through this like that he's not a good narrator. It's like, well, I don't see another goddamn narrator, so pipe down. After he talks about silly putty picking shit up off comic books, and then we get the scene of how Harmony got to the party, and like direct quote from the movie. So like Harmony, like most LA girls, isn't from here. So she was born in Indiana, blah blah blah. And much like most soon to be fucked up girls, she was wicked smart. But that's because she had a good teacher. And cut to a nice loving shot of her mom, who's clearly sick. But then Harry, as the narrator, is like, not her, him. And it's the Johnny Gossamer books that she's reading. And this is actually a new segment that I told Shane very little about. This is our retro deep dive. This is where I find something in the movie that I just got super fascinated by and go on a Wikipedia and online Googling deep dive. And so very obviously, Johnny Gossamer is based off Raymond Chandler, the noir detective, pulp detective writer.
I honestly thought the whole time it was a Bond thing.
Oh, really? Well, I mean,
I also don't know who Raymond Chandler is, so
all right. So
that would make sense that I would think that it was something else.
All right. So I will give you some information on Raymond Chandler. So Raymond Chandler, born in 1888. 1888. Sorry, way off.
That seems way too late.
Way too late.
He was almost 20 when this came out. He was just turning 18.
Yeah.
He's already on book 27.
Yeah. Raymond Chandler was born in July of 1888. He died in March of 1959. Very well-known novelist, mostly known for the Philip Marlowe detective novels. His biographer actually quoted in saying he's a touchstone for crime writing, representing not just excellent fiction, but also a type of writing that was once powerful and beautiful. Raymond Chandler wasn't always a novelist. He actually, for almost a decade, was actually part of he went from working as a bookkeeper to working as the vice president for Dabney Oil Syndicate, where the last year when he was actually vice president of the company, he made it would roughly be in today's dollars, it would have been almost like $200,000+ a year working as this oil executive. But he was then fired for reportedly problems with alcoholism, absenteeism, promiscuity with female employees, and threatening suicides.
Oh boy, that must have been really bad back then, because they didn't care about that kind of stuff then.
Yeah, this would have been 1931. So he then this was, as he said, this was when like pulp novels were really big, because it was the Great Depression, and so the pulp novels were printed on such cheap paper that they were easily disposable. So people didn't think too much of it, and this is where you get the detective pulps like Black Mask, and a lot of other prominent ones. And he decided, because before he became an oil executive, he did do some writing, mostly as like journalism, but then he decided, I decided it might be a good way to try to learn to write fiction and get a small amount of money at the same time. So he actually spent almost 5 months working on his first short story. And his first 3 short stories, he ended up making basically the equivalent of about a couple $1,000. And then his first novel, he wrote. So in 1933, he started writing periodically for Black Mask, with a short story titled Blackmailers Don't Shoot. And then he would go on to work on a lot of more novels, and released his first novel in 1939, which was actually, he jokes that he kind of cannibalized 2 of his short stories, because 2 of the characters or dynamics were pretty similar. Both of them had an older father and a younger daughter, who was a bit promiscuous. And he kind of combined those characters together, and combined and fleshed them out a little bit more for the novel The Big Sleep. And so this is where we get the formula of these 2, and Shane is probably nodding along and realizing where this is going. We get these 2 stories that are seemingly very different, that in the end
Same story.
are both part of the same story. But in like most very convoluted stories, he cared a lot more about how his characters talked and the descriptions that they'd make of things than the actual plots. So there are plot holes all over his novels. So much so that when Big Sleep was adapted into a movie in 1946, the Howard Hawks and a lot of even the cast were going through the script and are like, who the hell killed the chauffeur? Like, there's all these deaths, and we realize, like, well, that person killed that person killed this. Who the hell killed Owen? And so they sent a telegram to Raymond Chandler, and his response back was basically like, damn it, I don't even know either. Don't ask me who tried to kill him. I just wrote the thing. But yeah, he started writing novels in 1939, including The Big Sleep, Farewell My Lovely, The High Water, The Lady in the Lake, The Little Sister, The Long Goodbye, Payback. And in 1944, he was actually nominated for Best Screenplay for co-writing Double Indemnity. And
I've heard of that.
Yep. Double Indemnity is actually on my list of movies that I will potentially recommend later in this series, which they ended up losing to the movie Going My Way. 1944 was also the first time one of his novels got adapted for the screen, but in typical Hollywood fashion at that point in time, he wasn't asked to write it. Like Hollywood, especially at that point in time, were like, oh, he wrote the novel. Who cares? Like, we're going to get somebody else to adapt it, even though he'd already proven that he was a good screenwriter. But the funny thing is, so the adaptation of Farewell, My Lovely, they actually renamed it to Murder, My Sweet. And it was written by John Paxton, who is actually the uncle of Ed Brubaker, the comic book writer.
Oh, interesting.
And was kind of one of Ed Brubaker's influences. So in some ways, a very Raymond Chandler-esque character was the inspiration for Ed Brubaker's The Fade Out, and much like Raymond Chandler is the inspiration for the Johnny Gossamer character.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And one final quote from Raymond Chandler. As I look back in my stories, it would be absurd if I did not wish they had been better. But if they had been much better, they would not have been published. If the formula had been less rigid, more of the writing of that time might have survived. Oh, some of us tried pretty hard to break out of that formula, but we usually got caught and sent back. To exceed the limits of the formula without destroying it is the dream of every magazine writer who is not a hopeless hack. And that's a great quote to end on, because literally as in the narration, this is when Harmony is talking, or Harry is talking about the Johnny Gossamer character, and he says, well, in the end, the writer said, it was all bullshit. He did it for the money. But then
what does he know? He's just the writer.
Yeah, what does he know? He's just the writer. And then that is our first cut to, oh, I made this big deal of this robot, and then I didn't end up saying anything like this. Like you said, this is like my dad telling a joke. Oh, the cowboy rode a blue horse. Whatever that joke was supposed to be.
Yeah, I had no idea. I was trying to figure out if that was a real joke, and I was just like, I can't think of anything that could have been connected to.
Yeah. So then we get the Harmony Faith Lane actually as an actress, basically killing this guy who played Protocop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in her defense, he broke into her house.
He did break into her house, yeah.
He just said, hey, and dude falls backwards over the balcony. Yeah. And then that's how she gets invited to the party, because Larry Miller's character sees it.
Yep. And then she passes out at the party reading some Johnny Gossamer books. And this is the first portion that I start kind of liking Harry, because this guy is definitely creeping in on Harmony. And Harry stands up to
lifting her dress a little bit, and yeah, and while she's asleep, like, ugh.
Yeah, it's real ugh. And I really enjoy the Harry's talking all this like tough talk, and it's like, yeah, let's go outside, you and me, let's go outside. And then it hard cuts to this guy just beating the shit out of Harry.
Which is a running gag for the rest of this party sequence, which is only about 5 minutes longer, but
yeah,
of a bunch of other people mentioning that was the guy that beat him up.
Yep.
I really enjoy the as he's leaving, and he's just like, hey, did you see that blonde girl? Did you see it's like, oh, the one that left with the guy who beat the shit out of you? She's like, no. And then she yells back, have a better day.
I love the little valet. And yeah, so this is our introduction to Gay Perry, who, as is mentioned, he consults in film, television, recently incorporated, honest to God, Private Eye.
And Kyle, is he still gay?
Knee deep in pussy, but I just like the name so much, can't get rid of it.
Funny joke.
I do love that joke.
I realize a lot of my I like the character Gay Perry a lot, outside of the obvious problematic elements of of him in the story, but because his humor is very similar to things that I would do, where it's like if somebody mishears me or like says something that's slightly different, how I just like to twist it and make it into something else and just go with it.
Yep.
Like he goes talking money and he goes a talking monkey. Yeah, a talking monkey came from the future. Says ficus.
Says ficus.
A lot. I'm just like I'm like that's good humor. Like that's
Yep.
it's dumb humor, but it's great humor because the humor's dumb, but it's not because he's dumb. It's because someone else is being dumb and he's running with it. I
Yeah,
love it.
he's just running with it and just kind of, as the British would say, taking the piss out of it,
Yeah.
But yeah, so Harry gets cleaned up a little bit. His cut's cleaned up by Perry, in the kitchen. Harlan Dexter comes by, introduces himself. They talk about how his daughter was away in Europe for many years. And then Perry explains as Harlan leaves that he just reconciled with his daughter after being estranged for many years. And then we get our second cut of like, oh, that was a terrible scene. Why was that in the movie? I wonder if it'll come back up again later.
Just straight up calling out the stuff like that which is, I mean, it's endearing that it's like pointing that out to you right away too, because it's like it makes no sense in the context of why you would even see that unless it means something, and they just call it out right off the bat, and it's fun, it's nice, it's a interesting way to do a movie, and I think that's part of it is it's so different than what anything else would do that it stands out as like a good choice because of that.
Yep. And then Harry talks about the fact that this blonde reminded him of this girl from high school he was friends with and had a crush on. And then
she did everyone else in town except for his best friend.
Yep, except for Chuck Chutney.
And then he goes and Kay Perry knows her and tells her what bar to go to. He goes to the bar, meets up with her, jokes, has a couple of funny jokes about people that look like other people in the bar.
Yeah, Brazilian Billy Bob Thornton, which, I mean, he did look like 2005 Billy Bob Thornton, I guess.
I suppose.
But that one was a reach. But Harry goes to leave after telling her friend that your mouth is a recommended place to put a sock, which was a very nice insult. And then Harmony says, Harry Lockhart, are you going to recognize me?
Was the girl from college or from high school that got away?
Well, she left when she was 16, she said. So she was the girl from earlier. And so then we cut back to our opening shot of the magician, and we realize
there's people blocking the way.
And then it's like, let's see, look, Harold the Great. And these two kids, which we should have seen this coming, because do you know who both of these kids were?
I know that the girl is from Modern Family.
Yep. Yeah, the girl's Ariel Winter, so probably the second most successful person in this movie.
I do not know the boy.
The boy, we should have realized that he does look like a young Robert Downey Jr. because it is Robert Downey Jr.'s eldest son.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, basically the only thing he's been in that I can see of note. So they get to talking, have everything like that. Talking, reminiscing. She still feels bad about leaving her sister because, Papa, as they say in the narration, Papa was out after her every night. And so we get some fun interactions between the two of them. And then cut to the next morning, Harry is waking up, leans over, and it's her friend in bed with him.
Yep. Ooh, wrong girl.
Yeah, wrong girl, wrong throat. As Harry goes to apologize. And also another recurring theme, Harry getting the door slammed in his face multiple times. Which I always forget which ones are which, and I always think that the later one is this one.
Yeah, I did the same exact thing, but I'm sitting there, I'm just like, oh, that's too early in the movie.
Yeah, it's too early. It's but so then he, in very noir fashion, walks away, lights up a cigarette, looks back towards the camera, and walks into the horizon. And then cut to day 2, The Lady in the Lake, which all of the chapter titles are Raymond Chandler books.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that is why I did that deep dive. And this is Perry going and explaining to Perry of like, oh yeah, like these books were so good. They, Johnny Gossamer always had 2 cases, and in the end, they were always connected. Because Harry is on this stakeout with Perry to help with his acting. Because he's getting detective lessons for this film.
Yeah, and then in this stakeout, they come up along the people in the building that they're staking out drive away, and they try to follow them, and they get lost, and they stop at a lake, and as they stop there, the car comes careening out of the bushes and flying into the lake. At which point, Harry tries to jump in and save them, but Perry is just like, no, it's fine. And then Perry, which in the moment I remember thinking to myself, like, why does he want to get the keys out of the car? And then it's explained later in the movie that he was trying to help his employer. But but he like goes down there, tries to get the keys out of the car. For some reason, shoots open the trunk, which I never figured out why that even happened.
Well, he couldn't. He tried the lock, but with the keys, but couldn't get it open. So he had to shoot the lock open to get the body out.
But but I didn't know why he was trying to get in the trunk. It's not even with the explanation later of like body removal kind of thing. Doesn't make sense of why he would think that there is for sure a body in the trunk that he needs to get out.
Yeah, that's true. But
so
yeah,
that was just a little confusing for me. But
I do enjoy the inversion of the film noir trope too at the beginning of this, of who hired you, and it's like, this woman named Allison Ames. It's like, oh, was she a looker? Going and completely making fun of the film noir trope of the detective in his office and this smoking hot woman coming in and a seamless dress, and flirting with and kind of getting him to do this thing, getting him to do this case. And the inversion of that of like, no, she called me on the phone and paid via credit card. Like, never met this woman, which will come up, later, which is nice. But yeah, it's like like Perry's, after we get the body out, it's like, of course she's dead. Her neck's broken. It's like, oh yeah, they'll definitely believe that after you shot her in the head.
Yeah, and then this comes with one of my favorite jokes of the movie. Harry throws the gun into the water, and he's Perry is just like give me my gun. He's like, and he's mad. He's like, the gun my mom gave me. And then he's like, you look up idiot in the dictionary, you know what you see?
My picture?
No, the definition of the word idiot, which you fucking are. And it's so good. It's just so good.
Yeah, and also Val Kilmer's delivery of the word, what happens when they drag the lake?
Yep.
Think they're going to find my gun? My $2,000 ceramic vector that my mother gave me as a gift? Yeah, then he's talking, and he gets Harry gets a phone call saying that, did you happen to give your number to Miss Harmony Lane? Yeah, I don't know. Why? Well, we're, we treat every suicide as a homicide. And so we're supposed to investigate every suicide as a homicide. So Harry had just reconnected with Harmony, and then she dies. So he thinks. So his, of course, response is to just get drunk in the hotel room. So he gets drunk, calls his nephew or whatever it's supposed to be. And the nephew's like, yeah, I got a cyber agent. It's like, oh yeah, you're gonna have a protocop coming too, and it's probably worth more now because I think the guy's paralyzed or something.
Yep.
Um,
And then he's interrupted by a knock on the door, and it is Harmony. She is alive.
yeah, she is. She is alive, ranting about that it was her sister, and my friend Flicka told me that you were a private investigator. Like, he spouts out all of this information. It's like she stole all my credit card or my ID, and that's why people like thought that's why you got the call. And then, right before she died, she charged like $2,000 on the credit card to some Centron Inc., some bullshit company. And then, Harry, it definitely isn't murder, or definitely isn't suicide, because she took her birth control pill. And it's like, Harry, you're gonna help, right? You're gonna help. And then he finally agrees. It's like, yeah, I'll help. And then she's like, oh, good. And then passes out.
Yep. And then while she's passing out, he's like trying to cover with a blanket, but there's a very large and uncomfortable looking spider. Like that
Yeah.
is way too big of a spider for a scene like that. I get that they needed to make sure that you could see the spider, but man, that spider that would be a terrifying spider to see on somebody.
Yep.
And it crawls into her bra, and he like flicks it, and she wakes up, and she's like, "You grabbed my tit. It's no big deal." He's like, "No, someone grabs your tit, and it is a biggie."
That came out wrong.
That came out wrong, but there's this conversation where he ends up being a dick in the end, and saying like, "You're that kind of woman."
Yeah.
So she leaves while he's in the bathroom peeing, and he turns to see the dead body that they had gotten rid of, and he pees on the body.
Yeah. So he pees on the body. Calls Perry. Which Perry's reaction to all of this is so just amazing. Of like, what do you mean they brought her back? Like this is a corpse. It's like, and then explaining everything. It's like, that it's going to be a setup. They're going to have this gun, like they're going to plant a gun because it's a setup. So get out of there, get the gun. And then Harry's just like, so I peed on it. And Perry's reaction of just like, wait, what? Why in Poop Perfect Hell would you pee on a corpse?
I didn't mean to.
Didn't mean to.
So then you get the shenanigans of the cops are downstairs. Harmony sends them to the wrong room. Perry gets up there. They're getting the body out. They throw it off the roof for some reason, even though they then run down the stairs, where they could easily have just brought it down the stairs. But I'm guessing they were trying to get it down quick.
Yeah. Which that shot of them tossing it off the roof, I remember. So they toss it off the roof, and it hits half of the dumpster. Like half of it hits the dumpster and then like recoils over.
Yep.
Which is it is a shot in the trailer, and that's actually one of the things that made me want to watch this movie at first, because I saw the trailer, because we had a box, like we get trailers for all the upcoming video releases, and that was part of the trailer, and I'm just like, this is so stupid. I need to see this movie to figure out what the hell is going on.
Then you get some. They make out in the alley to throw off the police for some reason. You get some homophobia from the police, and then you get a what I think is a very poor writing thing, and that's just I have this scene that I really like, but it kind of writes me in a corner. So how do I get out of it? I'm just not going to tell you what happens. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah. It's
Harmony
like,
catches them and gets mad at them, and they like, and then the next scene is them driving up, be like, I got her to go away, and to go home for the night, tell her I call her tomorrow, and I somehow convinced her I wasn't gay. Don't ask me how I did it. And that was it.
Yeah.
It doesn't say how we did any of it. and they just continue on with the movie, which is fine. I just think it's a poor writing tactic, and I get
Yeah.
that it probably felt like it fit in with the movie, but it was just like, oh, you kind of got stuck. You just really liked the way that this scene would go, and then you were like, oh no, I don't really have a way to get out of this scene.
Yeah, and then this is when the kind of movie picks up a lot, because Harry, sits down, talks with her, is jotting down all of these notes about, her sister, and she's like, well, the only lie I ever told her was that your incestuous father is not actually your father. Your actual father was part of this Johnny Gossamer movie that came to town when the year before you were born. And so she thinks that Jenna, her sister, came out here to look for her father. And something happened. And this is then the news comes out that they found this body, and it was Veronica Dexter, Harlan Dexter, Corbin Burnson's estranged, just reconciled,
Again, Christian
daughter, who Harry saw without panties on, because her dress was soaked through.
That'll come up later.
Yeah.
Another one of those little scenes earlier in the movie that you see it happen, you'd be like, oh, that probably means something.
Yeah, it's like that probably means something. So shortly after, Perry pulls a real dick move and just tells all of the stuff to Harmony, apparently off screen, of course. And he is now, so Harmony is now very mad at Harry, and so much so that, and then we also find out that Harry was just brought in because Colin Farrell wants too much money.
Yes. And then Harry, and then he's like, I understand if you want to punch me. Harry punches him, and then that makes Perry mad because even though he said that he could do that, he didn't actually mean it. And then he's just like, I already did this dick thing though. Here, I'm going to tell you that she wasn't happy.
She was not happy. But also he's like, it is getting way too hot for you here. You should go back home before something worse happens. Because like if the guys who ID'd you, who were clearly at that party, which is what they realize how they ID'd him, could already find you and already try and plant a corpse on you, you need to get out of here.
Yep. So what does he do? He goes to Harmony's to try to reconcile. And
he does go to the airport.
That's right. He goes.
He does go to the airport
first, where he sees Flicka.
Yep, he sees Flicka, and he says, "Oh, I just want to call to apologize." And I do love the interaction because I've been in this situation before of trying to talk to, someone's friend to try to apologize to them. And he tries to give the line of like, well, maybe it was you I was interested in. And she's like, yeah, bullshit. Sure. And he's like, no, I'm lying. I was totally into your friend. I'm sorry. And then Flicka's like, oh, that's funny. In my phone, it's under her stage name. Oh, everybody's got a stage name. What is it? Oh, Allison Ames.
The name on the card that paid for Perry.
Yep. You overpriced bastard.
Yeah. That the sister stole the credit card and used it to pay Perry for $2,000, overpriced bastard.
Yeah.
And his case and Perry's case are the same case.
We got the Johnny Gossamer thing going.
And now he goes to Harmony's.
Yep, now he goes to Harmony's.
Apologize and say what's going on, and she slams the door in his face.
But it doesn't quite. Yeah, I mean, it slams in his face, but his hand was still in the door frame.
Yeah, so she opens up right away, and she goes, "Did I just cut off your?" Yeah, they're on the ground. Pick them up.
Yeah, Yeah. So his like I can't remember his right or left
His
ring
left
finger
ring finger. Yep.
is cut off, and then he gets surgery for it. It gets kind of sewed back on.
He's on painkillers.
Yeah. So then he arrives to this party mildly whacked on Demerol. And Harmony they're working a Christmas party, which is the rationale behind why we gave this to be our Christmas special, because it's a Shane Black movie, so of course it is set around Christmas.
Christmas adjacent, thanks to Shane Black.
Yep, Christmas adjacent, aka every Shane Black movie.
Yep.
Except Predators, I think. I don't know if that one's actually around Christmas.
I never saw the Predator movie with an S at the end.
That's fine. It's apparently not good. But so Harmony is starting to investigate this whole thing, and her friend from Fox, who does dubbing, gave them a copy of the Johnny Gossamer movie, because this was basically a little before YouTube and streaming, so you can't just I'll upload clips from this Johnny Gossamer movie. So we see it.
And it made me wonder what the clips because that was a young Corbin Burnson in that. That
was a young that was a young Corbin Burnson.
Was clips from.
I can't remember. It's in the that was one of the things that while I was doing my Raymond Chandler deep dive, I forgot to do this dive of trying to figure out what movie this was from. But yeah, and in typical gay fashion, too, of like it's starring a Michael Beck. He's from Xanadu with Olivia Newton-John. It's like, of course, that is what Perry recognizes him from, not The Warriors.
And also, gay men, nobody likes Xanadu. Gay men doesn't like Xanadu. Nobody likes Xanadu.
It's okay. It's more the Olivia Newton-John that's the stereotypical, especially of that era, gay men.
Yes, I agree with that part of it, but yeah. It's still one of those things where it's like, nobody likes this.
Yeah. So Perry leaves so they realize, like, well, Harlan Dexter's in this movie. Oh. Your sister probably saw this. Maybe, this might have something to do with, Veronica Dexter. This is a little weird. And then so Perry has a surveillance that he has to do in a park. So he leaves. Harmony goes back to working the party. Harry is still whacked out on painkillers. And we get the two goons that are hired by the bad guys that are there to intimidate Harry. Making a Ike, Mike, and Mustard reference, which I didn't get. They're actually credited in the credits as Mr. Frying Pan and the Fire.
Mr. Mustard.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool. They kind of beat up Perry a little bit and actually rip the bandages and kind of crush his hand. Meaning that his finger is nearly falling off again. So Harmony drives him to the hospital, but she's like, "Oh, that's the park that Perry's doing his surveillance in. We gotta go. I'm just gonna yell. I'm just gonna stop, say, Perry, look out, and then leave. You can drive yourself to the hospital, right?" And then leaves Harry. Harmony then goes and almost gets beaten up and kicks the one guy in the balls as she's fighting. And in a nice little character moment, though, that we'll see the difference in later, She has the gun. She gets the guy's gun, has it aimed at him, and can't pull the trigger. Doesn't have that in her to do that. And then we see this pink-haired girl who steals the car. And while she steals the car, Perry gets confronted by one of the thugs that were attacking Harry earlier. And he comes out, pulls the gun back out, and gets shot by like a food trailer like vendor in the park.
Yep, which is kind of a funny scene because he's coming up to shoot him, and the vendor's just yelling like "Brah!" and that just starts shooting and kills the guy. Also, real quick, I've been looking up a couple things. Apparently, Ike, Mike, and Mustard are off-color jokes from the pre-1950s.
Okay, that makes sense.
Something that we would just never have gotten, but I'm sure they would have shown up in this style of book.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, I mean, the first Raymond Chandler book is all about distributing pornography, so yeah. That's the case that he's on. The like one of the subplots is they're secretly they're secretly like distributing pornography, which was legal at that point. Then the next morning, Harry wakes up in the pink-haired girl's garage, and he overhears, which the pink-haired girl, some of you will recognize as I just forgot.
Shannon Sossaman.
Yeah, Shannon Sossaman. I was like, I forgot her last name.
From A Knight's Tale.
From A Knight's Tale and 40 Days and 40 Nights, and Wrist Cutters. Very underrated. Doesn't get enough work because I think she's fairly good, but just doesn't.
I really enjoyed her in a lot of stuff, and I thought that it was weird that her role was so tiny in this, and like at the time, I think she was big enough when this movie came out that I was just like, that's Shannon Sossaman from Knight's Tale and things like that. But I wonder if it was filming or something when she got that big.
So I looked up her, like on her Wikipedia. She basically was kind of in a mini hiatus between like 05 and 08. Okay. She still did a few things here and there, like a few things got distributed that she was in, but she wasn't in a ton because she was kind of like, hey, I'm going to take a break for various reasons. Who knows? But yeah, so the pink-haired girl is talking with the one of the other guys, one of the other goons, and sits down on this bed, and the goon says like, "Don't worry, you'll never have to go through anything like that again," and then shoots her and kills her. And this is while Harry's hiding underneath the bed.
Bullets hit like right next to his head.
Yeah.
And then she falls and is looking at him.
Yeah, and clearly is, even though she's in her, which this is also sad of like, she's clearly there in her dying, like she doesn't even get to get out any like last words because Harry quiets her and just like, shh. Like, because clearly she's asking, wait, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
And then she's going to say something else, and he just puts kind of a finger to her lips, and she's like doesn't have enough energy to say any other words. And so this is where we think that the movie is over. Because, Harry gets back up, shoots the other goon, is very distraught about it, so calls gay Perry, and is like, Perry, I just shot a guy. I've never done that before.
Drops the phone and begins to get sad.
Yeah. And he's just like, get out of there. Like wipe the place. is for Prince and get out of there. It's like, well, I can't do that. The dog,
Fingerprints dog's mouth.
yeah, the thing's in the dog's mouth. It's like they're not gonna dust the dog. It's like, no, literally, he has my finger, and then the dog just eats the finger. Which in now, living with a dog, probably about that size, I can see this happening because my roommate's dog will eat anything.
Oh yeah, that's a believable part.
Yeah.
And then it was right after that where he does the I shot a man and he gets sad because the dog comes up and he hugs the dog and it's just like
yeah, it's like the dog consoles him better than Perry ever did.
Yep.
So then we get a nice little recap of Perry kind of saying, everybody thinks that now, the kidnappers turned on each other, and I still have a few unanswered questions, but was that Johnny Gossamer enough for you? And then they basically set up the rest of the movie in this little monologue of like, oh, I mean, in the Gossamer movies, there was always, it's definitely a bigger ending. Like there's always that part where he gets tortured and then he breaks free and shoots like 16 guys.
It's always 16.
It's always 16. That's weird.
That's a fun meaning.
Yeah. So then,
because the body count in this movie at the end equals that number.
Yeah, probably in total, but yeah, it's like it's not 16 in the next scene. It's just
the next scene. It's in total in the movie. It's 16.
Yeah.
13. It's 13. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I was like, I don't even think
it's
13. Okay.
13 guys.
No, it's 16 guys. Like, but the actual body count. I think there's probably some deleted scenes and stuff that it probably would have ended up being at 16. But then Harry and Harmony kind of reconcile a little bit, and he has this nice like monologue about kind of, they're both saying, pretty much going over all the stuff from their past, and I don't want and Harmony thinking it's like, oh, you think I'm amazing, but out there's younger and there's better. And then Harry responds back with, I don't want younger and better, I want you.
Yeah, not a smooth line.
Yeah, and it's like that's not what I meant. And then goes into this like nice little monologue of like, I steal shit for a living. And talking about cutting and running and not really being able to finish anything in his whole life. And when things are going good, he cuts and runs. And then Harmony's like, oh, yeah, kind of like the other night where you were all over me. And then you just stop and just go for Marleya. He's like, yeah, I go for the ugly friend. I mean, homely. She's not ugly. And it's like, that's so mean. You're such a dick.
But the lines work. I mean, she ends up back up in the room with him and stealing gum herself.
Yep, stealing. Stealing gum because it's a rush. And and then she steals some gum. They talk about Whitey the White Knight. And they're like, oh yeah, it probably is better like Whitey than like Nighty, because then it would soon be, Toodles and Nighty Night, and then we get one of my favorite scenes of talking about that, and she's changing. Clearly had she said herself even had like probably one too many drinks, so she's just gonna pass out on the bed. And he's like, oh, so I got the couch. It's like, yeah, I mean, it would just be sleeping. You can come over here, but it would just be sleeping. And then it's like, unless that's gonna frustrate you. And he's like, all right, let's see. So he lays down. on, and that's when he's like, "Oh, this is just great. Like, this is how it was meant to be." And then he says something, and this is when she calls him Whitey, and is like, "Oh, you calling me a knight? Well, except for the boner, that's not very knightly." And then the response back is just like, "Well, actually, nightly in most mornings."
Yep. Which
Yeah, happens.
Yep.
And then Harmony, and then they make out a little bit, and then Harmony's like, I got a confession. And then we cut to, you what?
She slept with Chuck Chutney.
You slept with Chuck Chutney. You, and then arguing about this, and it's like, this was supposed to be the one person you said you weren't going to sleep with. It's like, you said you weren't going to go. You said it was just going to be, wave goodbye. He's like, he looked sad.
But it gets her thrown out, and then she realizes something.
Yep, she realizes, like, oh, wait, hey, were there any signs of sexual assault? And he's like, no, you slept with Chuck Chutney. I did also like the little touch that I don't think I noticed before this, but when he slams the door, he says, watch your hand.
Yep.
Which is so good. Like, oh, of course he did. So Harmony thinks she has kind of a clue of like, oh, maybe there is more to this. And then so the next day, day 4, the simple art of murder. Harmony Harry is woken up by Perry, and it's like, oh, your little friend, has a lead, and I can't find her now. Harry tells him the whole story about the night, and then he mentions the panties, and then it clicks for Perry as well, of like, I think it might be the mental institution. And so Harry and Perry go to the Dexter Institute for mental health, where, as they say, even the good girls don't wear panties.
Yep. And they figure out what's going on there, and they as they're leaving, they get caught by an orderly who seems to be a goon that's in on it because he's got a gun and is going to bring them back inside. And Perry does this little thing of like, how in the movies the goons are always got the gun right held to the back. Yeah. Really, they actually want 5 feet, about 5 feet of distance between them. That makes it so the person they're holding the gun against doesn't do this. And he snatches the gun back, and then you get a little some pretty fun repartee where it's where Perry knows everything and Harry doesn't. So it's a nice way to give us more information here, because Harry doesn't know the things that we don't know, so he's asking those questions and Perry is explaining it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, so why did you have to kill her then? It's like, oh, because it's the boyfriend. The boyfriend would have come back, figured out the fake, and so we got rid of her. And then he's like, all right, so, and you've got to also credit, like, I know this is a movie thing, but this is a pretty badass like goon to say this line while he's getting a gun pointed at his head. It's like, I want you to
picture a bullet in your head.
That's ambiguous.
No, it isn't. Well, actually, it is.
It's like, yeah. Do you mean like picture it in my head, like, or like picture a bullet will be inside my head? Like, what, which one is it? And then Harry, fed up with this, because Perry has a regular, with the sleeve or whatever they call the clip.
He's got a clip gun while Harry's got a revolver with a I think it's an 8-shot barrel.
Yep. So then he puts one bullet in the sleeve in the barrel, spins it around, aims, and just shoots the guy in the head on accident.
And as he said, how much of a percentage chance did he think that was going to be?
8%.
Who taught you math? And yeah, it's pretty good. They
good.
They actually they get a hold of Harmony, who they thought was being held there somewhere. to
Yep.
find out that she had just bailed on the whole thing. She was like, "Yeah, it was done. I went home."
Yeah, I was
And
I was in the hills, shitty reception. It's like, of course that is also such an LA thing of like, yeah, no, I was in the hills. There was shitty reception. That's why you couldn't get a hold of me all day.
yep, but they pretty much told her that she was right, and that they were there, and getting things figured out. And that's when Harry's yelling about taking Dexter down, and Dexter is standing right there, and they've got guns to him, and he goes down to the thing and get that old son of a gun a drink.
Yeah,
Um,
because they get off the phone with Harmony and then hide the corpse, and then that's when they get caught.
yep. And while they're being brought inside, they get a phone call, and Harry snatches the phone from the air and says that Dexter's got them and they're at the mental institution. At which point the goon grabs the phone and said, "Yeah, he just told that to a carpet cleaning company, but it's Harmony because she thought on her feet."
Yep, yeah, smart on Harmony. But also, so so these are back to back. This is one of my gripes with this scene. Even though Harry is an idiot, so I can see this happening, as a magician who is good at sleight of hand, couldn't he have like made it look like he was going to put the bullet in the barrel and then pull it out quick as he's doing the spin, instead of actually shooting the guy in the face?
He was a magician as a kid, and yeah, he's good at sleight of hand because he boosts stuff. But like, I don't know. I think that's a stretch.
Maybe not. Yeah, that probably was a stretch. Also, Harry as a character definitely wouldn't think about that. So that's also one of the things of like, as Shane and I will probably reference multiple times, like we play Pathfinder, and my character is supposed to be very stupid in that game. And I think of things and realize like there is no way my character would have actually done this because my character would not have thought that way. And that's the same thing with Harry here of like, oh, he definitely wouldn't have done that. So, but yeah, Harmony shows up.
Well, you get another homophobia scene.
Yeah, we get another very homophobic scene because, as we said, they literally set up the rest of the movie because they get caught and tortured. And how they were getting tortured is the whole Shane McMahon battery to the nuts scenario. And so, which also, I just love the, like, it feels like it's such a nasty way to torture somebody, but then also just the little squirt gun is like, no, I'm gonna make sure this is wet so that it, distributes out the electricity even more so it hurts more, but he's shooting him with like a little tiny squirt gun pistol.
Yep, it's such a dumb little thing.
Yeah. And then then Perry, acting as only Perry can act, talks about how it's like, oh, you could literally zap him anywhere. Like, it was your choice. It was your choice. You had to describe, like, you had to pick the balls. Like, you just wanted that. And then as he's doing that, he's reaching into his pants and shoots.
Yep, he's got a little gun that he had earlier. His little Derringer that he.
Yeah,
that's where he uses the F word that I'm not going to use.
Yep. It's like this is the little. Oh yeah, no, yeah. It's as Harmony. They call Harmony later. It's like, oh, how did you get out? How'd you get out? I shot him with a small revolver that I keep near my balls.
But here we get a lot of stuff happening all pretty quick here as they're trying to get to the body before she is cremated. So there's a bit of a car chase. Yeah, I'll let you kind of describe this a little bit better.
So Harmony steals this van that has that they're loading the corpse in with a couple guys behind it. So she steals the van, drives it out. Then so we get the start of this car chase between her and the rest of the goons. They run her off the road. She flips, the casket goes flying. It gets caught on the little sign on this overpass. Van flips. She runs to the side, falls to the side. Harry and Perry, manage to catch up to where that is. Somebody's about to shoot Harry. Perry steps in front of the bullet and it shoots through Perry. Harry also gets shot in the chest. And so he's knocked down, but he's not out. This is when Harmony calls him as she's passed out on the side, and basically does the, Harold, with your awesome might, help me from this, or save me from this helpless plight, quote that is what she says at the beginning when they're doing the magic trick. And so that gives him the second wind. He gets back up. Dexter goes to drive him off the road, but he misses, crashes.
He jumps over the guardrail, falls on top of the coffin, but catches himself by grabbing her arm when he does fall. And the gun is on the coffin, and he's dangling from just this woman's arm.
Yep.
From the overpass.
Yep. And then as that's happening, Dexter comes over and is about to look over the overpass at him. He yanks on the arm real quick, which jostles the casket. The gun comes flying, manages to catch it in the other hand, shoots Dexter. Captain fucking Magic. And then shoots the guy that is driving towards Harmony, falls on top of the van, finishes him off, then lays next to Harmony, and he's like, "Oh, they're having this nice scene." They're like, "Oh, how'd you survive?" And he's like, "Oh," pulls out this book that has a bullet hole through it. And you're thinking, "Oh, it stopped wait a second. It still has a bullet hole though." It's like, "Yeah, no, it went right through. He still shot me." And then he passes out and then wakes up in the hospital bed. He's recovering. They have a nice little scene and then in strolls, like, so as we were starting this recording, Shane was finishing the movie. And he said, "It's like, no, stop. This is my favorite joke."
Yeah. So, here you go. Harry coming in on a wheelchair, and Harry's like, "Yeah, boo hiss. I know. Look, I hate it too." I've got the quote in front of me.
Yep.
Look, I hate it too. In movies where the studio gets all paranoid about a downer ending, so that the guy shows up, he's magically alive on crutches. I hate that. I mean, shit. Why not bring them all back? And then all the people that, like, you get Shannon Sossaman, you get Frying Pan and Mustard, like everybody that had been killed in the movie starts walking in there, and then Abraham Lincoln comes walking at the end too.
To which the orderly grabs the guy that's playing Abraham Lincoln and pulls him and escorts him out of, like, "No, you're not part of this."
And he's like, "But the point in this case is this time it really happened. Perry lived. Yeah, it's a dumb movie thing, but what do you want me to do? Lie about it?" And then at that point, Elvis is trying to walk into the room.
Yep.
At the end too, and they're pulled him out too. But
yep. And then epilogue, "Farewell, my lovely. Don't worry, I saw the last Lord of the Rings movie. I'm not going to have this end like 20 times."
He sort of does, though.
He kind of does. But he's like, "But we've got to show you just one more scene." And it is Perry confronting Harmony and Jenna's sister.
Nope.
Harmony and Jenna's Harmony's sister, confronting their father.
That was a weird sentence. It was Perry confronting Harmony's dad, the molester, the one that, yeah. And it's at the funeral for Harmony's sister, and he's just like, he's like, "Who are you?" And Perry talks some crap, and he goes, "I just buried my daughter today," and that's when Perry goes, "No, you buried her years ago when you decided to touch her." And the guy tries to say something, and Perry just slaps him, and it's satisfying, but yeah, it's a rougher scene because it
Yeah.
also feels weird because the old guy is in a bed, and he's got a
Yeah, he's basically an invalid at that point. Like he's pretty much completely like almost looks like he's, probably in like hospice care.
and the guy
Like
says he says like, "I can't defend myself. What? Who do you think you're, a big tough guy?" And Perry just looks back and goes, "Yeah, big tough guy." It's just it is a good scene,
yeah.
but
It's a real good scene and then they realize like okay, that one is actually a downer ending. we need to do some fun stuff after this. So then Perry walks down and on the TV, we didn't reference this more earlier, but Harmony was an actress, and she said like one of the things that she had done was this Gennaro's beer commercial, and Harry was like, "Oh, Gennaro's like the one with the bear and the sucking heads off fish." Like,
I choose Gennaro's. But what do I know? I'm a bear. I suck the heads off fish.
and then she's like, "No, I got to do this little wave at the end." And then, so we get another Gennaro's, which that is also so. I want to say, do you remember why they chose that name for the beer company?
Gennaro's is from another movie, and I'm drawing a blank about which one it is.
Gennaro's is the maiden name for John McClane's wife in Die Hard.
Yep, that's what it is. And fun fact about the bear in that commercial, Kyle, who voices that bear?
Lawrence Fishburne.
Lawrence Fishburne voices a bear in a commercial in this movie.
Yeah, uncredited too, because he's just like, yeah, no, this is, like I just wanted to do it as a, because so the producer of this movie was Joel Silver, who I want to say was also one of the producers on the Matrix movies.
And then after that little thing, you get another ending, but this time it's him in front of a little camera in an office, and he's just like, "Yeah, I work for Perry now," and he's starting to say some stuff. And as this is happening, Perry walks up, and he's like, "All right, now that's it, end it,
Yeah. And stop narrating."
stop narrating. Tell the people of the Midwest, sorry, we said fuck so much.
Yeah.
If you're wondering who the best boy is, it's somebody's nephew.
I love the ending to this movie. Like I said, it has some problematic things as we've talked about here, but I still very much enjoy this movie and enjoy the experience, and like realizing it's like, okay, yeah, it's probably there are things that are dated about this movie, but there's also so many elements in this movie that I still love.
Yeah, I mean the movie's great. The movie is so much fun, and like I said, I think that to me, Shane, like, this movie still has a spot in my heart, and I still really really enjoyed it. And I've still enjoyed the crap out of watching it this time, even after seeing it. I've probably seen this, five between 5 and 10 times, somewhere in that number.
Yeah.
But I think that this movie was perfected in The Nice Guys. That he takes a lot of the stuff he did here and makes it a little bit better. I mean, it's not a clone of this movie at all. I just think that he uses a lot of things that he got from this movie in The Nice Guys, and a lot cleaner way.
Yeah.
I mean, mind you, that he also uses a lot of stuff that he got from Lethal Weapon, along his good. Like he likes to recycle his stuff.
Yeah, Last Action Hero, and
Yep, but when he recycles his stuff, he finds a way to make it better. So it's enjoyable. I still love this movie. I still have a soft spot in my heart for it.
yeah, like I said, I still like this is one of my favorite movies. So if not my favorite movie, which is kind of why we did this first, because I know I know I'm going to reference it a lot moving forward, so might as well have you fine listeners be able to know what I'm actually talking about and why I enjoyed this movie as much as I do.
So the next film is I get to choose.
Yes.
And one thing that Kyle and I have not talked about before this is what movie I'm picking.
Yeah, it is a surprise to me until right now. Well, right now, as we're recording it, by the time we put the episode out, I'll obviously have edited everything and we'll know, what's going on.
Yes, because you will know right now when I say it.
Yes.
um, so I thought that I'd be nice and give you. I'm not going to say which two I'm deciding between, but
Okay.
I'm deciding between two animated movies.
Okay.
One is American animation and one is Japanese animation. I'll let you choose if we go with the American or the Japanese.
Let's go. Let's go with the Japanese animation.
Okay. So and then I had a few that I could choose from that, but I'm choosing the one that's going to be easiest to get. So if you wanted to watch along with us, the movie's called A Silent Voice. It is on Netflix.
Okay.
It is a it's a fairly modern. It came out in 2016. It's from I'm forgetting the name of the studio right now. It's from a well-known studio, and I'll have a little more information about it when we watch it. About what else the studio's done and things like that. But it's a slice of life movie about a young boy and a young girl in their relationship, and she's deaf. Yeah, it's such a it's. I don't want to toot it too much, but I love this movie, so I'm excited for you to check it out.
All right. So yeah, that was A Silent Voice.
A Silent Voice, and you can find it on Netflix.
All right. Cool. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks with that. And in the meantime, make sure to like and subscribe on. That's more a YouTube thing. Sorry, I'll cut that.
Subscribe to us on your podcatcher of choice. We're on most of them.
Yeah, and follow me on all the other social media at Knocked Out Films.
And the only other thing I want you to do is be good to each other.